There's this short experimental indie game most people haven't heard of called It Comes in Waves. Progress in the game is never saved, it's meant to be played in one sitting. Upon starting the game, we find our nameless player character in a Tatooine-like settlement where most of its denizens don't wish to speak to us, and those who do condemn us for an unspoken past transgression. We hop in our land speeder vehicle and are met with a warning. We can never return here once we depart. With no other options, we head out into the desert wilderness.
It all started when you left.
This lone sentence, for the time being, is our only context to what's actually happening here. Largely isolated from civilization by our own choice, we wander the desert while growing an unnamed specimen on our back over time, with the goal of delivering it, once fully developed, to this place called Sanctuary. All we know about the specimen is that it requires water, a rare commodity in the desert wilderness. Nomads and raiders wander the desert, some fighting each other while others run for their lives. While we can find water canisters cast aside on the ground or in raided villages, we could also theoretically kill these other wanderers and take their water. Do we need it more than them? Is our journey more important? You play the main character after all, and these are just NPCs. The water would be wasted on them. I don't want to spoil what you find at Sanctuary. I'd encourage you to support the single developer by picking up this inexpensive and frankly beautiful game to find out for yourself. But even without knowledge of the ending, we can assume exactly what it is that apparently comes in waves. Guilt. Guilt and the vicious cycles we unknowingly find ourselves in can manifest in a wide variety of forms and severity for everyone. This can make guilt a rather difficult topic to discuss, let alone write an entire video essay on. But this topic's important to me, and I've wanted to do this for a while now. I've seen firsthand how guilt affects my friends, family, loved ones, and me. Even as I write this introduction, I can feel a weight in my chest, guilty thoughts swirling in my head. Am I going to do this topic justice? Will I really help anyone with this?
Their
What if it misdirects certain people? Am I really the best person to cover this?
I'm probably just
Will
full
the
of
right
shit.
people see
Other
it?
people probably
have
know
some
what I'm
value.
talking
What right do
about.
I have to
Is this
either?
really to
That's
help
pretty
others, or is this just my own? Stop!
This is just one of many depressive spirals I've wanted to break out of, and I truly hope by talking through and analyzing it, I can help you do the same. Now, given this is traditionally a video game channel, I want to examine the idea of guilt and cycles through the medium of games and other media which I felt captured these themes perfectly. That said, here's where I'll also drop a content warning. When discussing the plots and events of this media, there's going to be mentions of heavy violence, excessive gore, suicides, and a particularly tragic rape. Lastly, after you've watched the video, or even if you stop partway through, a comment from you would mean the world to me. I'd love to know if this was helpful, if it wasn't, how I could have improved it, or just your thoughts in general. And if you did find it helpful, maybe share it with your friends. Likes and subscribes are nice, but entirely unimportant to me. This video won't be monetized, and I have no Patreon at time of writing. I just want to get this out.
How do you like it?
Alright, I think that's enough preamble. So, if this journey is still one you want to go on with me, then take my virtual hand and let's dive in. My first encounter with the concept of the cycles of guilt came from one of my favorite gaming-related YouTubers, Mandalore Gaming. I can only assume if you're aware of our channel, you definitely know about Mandalore. He plays, reviews, and analyzes niche games, many of which I myself will likely never play. One such game was I Divine Cybermancy, a strange game from French developer Stremon, this studio. Mandalore's video is a fun watch, and I recommend it if you haven't seen it already. Now, to briefly summarize a near incomprehensible plot, your character did or maybe didn't do something and is now stuck in a concept called the cycles of guilt. Maybe you killed your mentor or your wife, or through inaction allowed someone to die. Honestly, the exact details aren't important. At the end of the game, if you haven't broken out of your cycle, everything loops and you find yourself back at the start. If you do somehow manage to break the cycle, you wind up in peace. A boring, empty, lonely peace. Oh, and you can essentially shoot a manhole cover open in peace and then jump into the manhole and instantly return to your cycles of guilt and keep playing the shooty stab video game. Yay, Fuller Auto! Suffice to say, the game may not have handled a serious topic with enough tact to be meaningful insight into potential real-life cycles of guilt. We can't all speak to the dead God Emperor of Mars or debate a werewolf. Well, okay, most of us can. I know Logan, who's editing this video, actually has a pretty close relationship with at least 2 God Emperors I'm aware of. Anyway, The phrase, the cycles of guilt, then became a sort of meme on Mandalore's channel. He's since played a number of other games which loop similarly in their narrative, and is usually met with Mandalore's eye-rolling sound.
Until you accomplish all the tasks and recall what truly happened, you'll be trapped in your cycles of guilt. Oh, no. Why does this keep happening? Why does it always come back to I?
Now, from a game design perspective, I totally get it. Make a character guilty for past transgressions, say they're trapped in cycles of guilt, and boom, your game is now highly replayable, or even a roguelike. In these cases, the emphasis is simply on the cycles part, where the actual past transgression causing the guilt remains nebulous. It makes sense that game developers are making a game, not a therapy vehicle. Still, ever since the I video, the phrase cycles of guilt has sort of lived rent-free in my head. Is it an actual psychological term? Is there any weight to it? What the hell does it even mean? Because one of my only reference point is another game Mandalore reviewed about a lighthouse keeper turning into a Mothman. Not exactly something many of us can relate to. Maybe Willem Dafoe. He's probably been through some shit. At time of writing, if you search cycles of guilt on YouTube, you get a handful of short I-related meme videos, and this clip from Bill Burr's latest show, Immoral Compass.
I'm just gonna tell you some shit that I wish people told me about 30 years ago before I ended up like this. Guilt. Come on. If you feel guilt, don't feel bad. That actually means you're like a good person. You know, hating yourself is natural. You hate yourself because you said yes when you meant no. My whole fucking life is that. Saying yes when I meant no, no when I meant yes. Carrying around guilt.
It's succinct, poignant, and blunt. Quickly veers into critiquing the way the world itself runs, though while Bill aims for a macro-level discussion, today I want to talk about it on the micro scale. Individuals, relationships, personal guilt, that sort of thing. So, while I enjoyed what I saw here, it still didn't help answer my question. What are the cycles of guilt? After some research, I found that there really is no consensus. It's not a term used often, and when it is, the defined details always seem a bit different, sometimes even incongruous with each other. This makes total sense to me. As I alluded to earlier, guilt comes in many flavors. Moral guilt, metaphysical guilt, political, criminal, reactive, anticipatory, existential, blueberry, lemon, and mystery flavor. My favorite. Tastes like disappointing my parents. So, while the guilt may come in many shapes and sizes, the cycle part is consistent. Mostly. The cycle refers to a repeating series of emotions, thoughts, and actions, or inaction, which essentially leads you into a hole where you find yourself digging deeper and deeper in an attempt to escape. Here, the solution seems simple. Stop digging down and instead climb up, stupid. Boom, done, therapized, you're not depressed anymore, congratulations, a bill for my time is in the mail. Now, in reality, these cycles are surprisingly difficult to identify. And even once you manage to, climbing out of that hole is even more burdensome because now you're aware of where you are. It starts to feel claustrophobic. The sheer height of the walls feels too daunting to even consider scaling. You may even long for the days when you were focused solely on digging, living in blissful ignorance of the growing size of the hole around you, or that the dirt you're supposedly shoveling away has started to fall back down on your shoulders. Here's my first-hand example of one such cycle. I had a few online friends I'd regularly play games with. Sometimes they'd go through tough times and I'd make sure I was there for them when I could be. When my own tough times rolled around, I'd heard the pain they were feeling and compared it to my own. At the time, I thought their problems outweighed mine, so I shouldn't burden these friends with my smaller issues. I didn't need to. I'm still spending time with them. Then, on one particularly bad week, I was ghosted on a couple hangouts. I took it personally. They're probably upset with me over something small I did. Now I feel guilty for probably doing something. What it was, I'm not even sure. I had a few guesses, but after always being there for them, they weren't there for me when I needed them most? Fine, I said, I won't reach out. I isolated myself from them because I was hurt. When they finally did reconnect to play more games, I wasn't interested. I was still hurting. Sometime later, I came to find out at least one of those friends had a death they were dealing with, and another was in the midst of a messy breakup. And what was my response? More guilt. My problems are petty and small. They're dealing with heavier things, and here I am upset with them. I'm a terrible friend, I thought. They deserve better than me. They also don't need my worthless problems burdening them more than they already are. I isolated further. Soon, those friends became acquaintances. Steam would tell me when they jumped into a game we used to play together, and they wouldn't invite me. I wouldn't either. I hadn't spoken to them in a while. Further guilt. Since I didn't like the feeling whenever I saw these notifications or their game status, I removed some of them from my friends list. Further isolation. I hadn't realized it at the time, but it rings true now. Guilt really does come in waves. A month later, I was trying my hand at streaming when one of those supposed acquaintances I unfriended rated my channel of a paltry 2 viewers with 50 of theirs. For a moment, it felt nice to see their name again. That feeling was immediately crushed by guilt. They're still being so kind after I'm gone from their friends list? God, I'm an asshole. Time for me to repair this relationship, open up about how I'd felt, express my regret. Too much work, feeling depressed. Isolation time. Therein lies the cycle of guilt. Negative emotions leading to negative actions, or in my case, inaction, which in turn led to isolation. Turns out, isolation is a great greenhouse for cultivating more negative emotions. Who'da thunk it? Then around and around we go. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride. I want to get off... Obviously, I could have and should have handled all of that differently, but let's put my personal therapy aside for now and instead shift gears to look at another cycle of guilt, this time through the lens of one of the very few video games which revolve around the theme of guilt. Let me just reach into the guilt pile. Here we go. Dead Space. Full story spoilers ahead. At the start of the game, our protagonist and player character, Isaac Clarke, has volunteered for a mission to investigate and, if necessary, fix the USG Ishimura, a massive space vessel which has gone dark, now drifting in the far reaches of space. It also happens to be where Isaac's girlfriend, Nicole, was stationed to work. The start of the game has Isaac watching a recording of Nicole, expressing her deep regret, apologizing for everything, wishing she had someone to talk to, and that Isaac was there with her. We learned that they haven't seen each other in person for over 6 months, only communicating through video chats. This most recent message was apparently the first he'd heard from her in weeks, and it's just that, a message, not a conversation. Now he's watching it on loop as he and his team fly out to the Ishimura. Most of you may know what happens next, generally speaking. Isaac arrives to the Ishimura and finds it's gone the way of the event horizon. Hell has broken loose, and now an overwhelming majority of the ship's crew are either dead, missing, or transformed into grotesque body horror creatures. As Isaac makes his way through this man-made hell, or maybe literally purgatory itself, he retraces Nicole's steps in an effort to find her. There's no indication she's been killed or transformed, and just enough evidence to imply she was working against the cult in an attempt to save what few members of the crew she can. Shockingly, Isaac finds Nicole very much alive midway through the game. And for the remainder, she assists him in repairing the ship, unlocking important areas, making us whole, and finally offering advice and guidance when a teammate betrays, Sorry, what was that last one? Make us whole? Make us whole. Make us whole. Make us whole. The end of the game brings a crushing realization. This isn't Nicole, but rather another scientist Isaac briefly crossed paths with. Both she and Isaac believed they were seeing their lost partners, hallucinations brought on by the marker, the strange obelisk causing this hellish outbreak and the monstrous transformations. Reality comes crashing down like a giant chunk of planet falling from orbit as Isaac realizes that Nicole's message from the beginning of the game ends with her regretful suicide. Succumbing to her own guilt and the inability to stop the cult's efforts, she ends her life rather than allowing the necromorphs or the cultists to do it first. But Isaac doesn't actually realize how the video message ended. He remembers how it ended. On a standard playthrough, this is where the story ends. Isaac escapes, but still carries Nicole with him as a specter of the past he can't escape from. However, if you manage to complete a series of side quests and explore in the right places, we as the players come to an unsettling realization as we find a recording, or maybe a projected memory, of the last video chat Nicole and Isaac had together. Prior to the events of the game, Isaac's mother had become indoctrinated into the marker-worshipping cult called Unitology, and killed Isaac's father before taking her own life. At the time, Nicole had been trying to help his mother leave the cult, and this sudden loss of valued loved ones cuts Isaac deeply. In the video call, he lashes out at Nicole. He blames her for the loss of his parents, and won't listen to reason. Swept up in the negative emotions of the event, Isaac pushes away and hurts a loved one. Nicole carried on for months on the Ishimura, trying to save more people to somehow right her perceived wrongdoings towards Isaac. When her efforts failed, and she took her own life during that message to Isaac, it sent him spiraling down into the cycles of guilt. Guilt for blaming Nicole for something out of her control. Guilt for not being there when she needed him most. Guilt that the last thing he said to her was so spiteful and devoid of the love that he held for her, and now she's gone. He won't let himself acknowledge this, though. Instead, he lives in denial, believing Nicole is still alive and there's still something he can do to resolve his guilt and make things right. When the betrayal of a teammate mentioned previously happens, that person was arguably trying to stop the mutations and put an end to this hell by taking the marker far away. Unfortunately, still stuck in his cycle of guilt, Isaac brings the marker back, activates it, and causes further death and harm. In the secret ending for the game, only obtainable by collecting a number of hidden artifacts during a second playthrough, we actually see Isaac further succumbing to his cycles of guilt. He spends the game largely in total isolation while living in full, unbreakable deniability that not only is Nicole alive, with him, and supportive of everything he's doing, but now he's off to build more markers, cause more suffering and death, all stemming from his inability to process his guilt. And the cycle continues. This video is neither sponsored nor monetized in any way. Despite that, and given the content of this video, I wanted to take a moment to raise awareness for a site I found incredibly helpful for mental health care, psychologytoday.com. I had spent the first half of this year with a sort of search paralysis when it came to finding a therapist on my own. Everyone had their own websites, some of which hadn't been updated in a while. It was rarely clear if they were accepting new clients, I wasn't sure if my insurance would be accepted, and many required a direct phone call to set something up. All of these things sound small, but when you're feeling at your mental lowest, a phone call to a stranger while in a state of vulnerability can be a monumental task. The call could go to voicemail or ring forever, and sometimes my inquiries were flat out ignored, which is a great way to be kicked while you're down. Luckily, I found Psychology Today. The landing page has you enter your city or zip code and select between options like therapists, psychiatrists, and even support groups. Once you get your results, you can filter by a ton of things like your insurance provider, the specific issue or issues you want to focus on, the language they speak, or even the gender of the therapist if that's important to you. You're provided with a name, picture, phone number, and a brief summary of their specializations, and even if they're accepting new clients or have a wait list. If you're still not comfortable with a phone call, you can click email and you'll get a simple and short form to fill out. You provide your name, contact info, and write a brief message about your needs. It even prompts you with 3 easy questions to answer if you aren't sure what to say. Applying this way takes literally a minute of your time, and you can apply to multiple specialists. Your mileage may vary, but in my personal experience, I applied to 3 and heard back from all of them the next day. 2 didn't work for my schedule, but 1 did. I had my first session 2 days later, and I couldn't be happier with the results. Now I want everyone to know about this site. Your mental health is so incredibly important. Don't neglect it. I'll provide a link in the description, but again, this isn't a sponsorship, so feel free to navigate there on your own. Best of luck to you. Now back to the video. This next example is a more severe examination of these cycles, but unlike the previous 2, it actually ends with hope. Progress on the path to recovery, however small it may be. So, full spoilers ahead for the film 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. If you're a fan of Martin McDonagh's previous work, In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, The Banshees of Inisherin, I lightly recommend watching it yourself. It's a tough watch, particularly if you're going through hard times yourself, but I personally loved it despite the heartache it gave. And if you haven't seen any of the man's work, I can at least give a hearty recommendation to 7 Psychopaths. I also want to take a moment to reiterate the content warning. This gets heavy. Anyway, 3 Billboards. To boil this down to important plot points at the cost of losing the tension and pacing, this film is about Mildred Hayes, a divorced mother played by Frances McDermott who has a fight with her teenage daughter Angela one night. Angela wants to borrow her mother's car and go to a party, and Mildred denies it. In a whirlwind of emotions kicked up by the fight, Angela exclaims she'll walk to the party. And despite her mother, she hopes she gets raped along the way. Mildred, caught up in the storm herself, shoots back.
Yeah, well, I hope you get raped on the way too.
Tragically, that night, Angela is raped, murdered, then set on fire. The majority of the film takes place after this event. Mildred is a husk of her former self, and we learn the local police department has made absolutely no progress towards finding the culprit, with no signs of that changing anytime soon. This is where we get the movie's namesake. Mildred rents 3 decaying billboards just outside the town and right along the patrol route of at least one police officer. Raped while dying, and still no arrests? How come, Chief Willoughby? Given this is a small town in rural America, it comes as no surprise that the Chief of Police, Bill Willoughby, played by Woody Harrelson, is a well-respected public figure. That respect may not be universal, but it feels that way to the audience and to Mildred as the majority of the town begins to turn against her. Our final major character is Jason Dixon, a racist, violent lout of a police officer played by Sam Rockwell. Dixon makes a point to push back and defend his chief, making life more difficult for Mildred wherever he can. Here's where I'll stop so we can take a glance at the cycles of guilt thus far. Mildred feels deep guilt for her last words to her daughter, for the broken family she had to raise her in, and for her inability to bring justice to the murderer. She outwardly projects that guilt as anger at the local police for failing to help in the matter at all. Dixon and the other townspeople push back on her with negative behavior, which fuels her to continue, doubling and then tripling down on her crusade with no end for her pain in sight. At the same time, Chief Willoughby is affected by his own cycles. While he may not always be thinking of the case, it's clear through his words and actions that somewhere deep inside, he wishes he can do the right thing. He even tries, reopening the case and ordering Dixon to begin an investigation. But with no chance it leads, his guilt weighs heavier and heavier. Unfortunately for Willoughby, he's also affected with pancreatic cancer, a ticking clock for his efforts to set things right. Before long, Willoughby succumbs to the weight of everything. Guilt, pain, sorrow, and after one more night with his family, he takes his own life. Dixon's in his own cycle too. His inability to be a good cop long enough to become the investigator he truly wants to be has left him bitter, violent, and closed off to everyone. From a wrongful arrest of Mildred's friend to throwing a billboard owner out a second-floor window in broad daylight, Dixon's negative behaviors cycle and become progressively more unhinged. This all culminates in his termination from the police force for his violent acts. Actually, it was after the violent act, but it seemed more like it happened because he mouthed off to his boss. But anyway, with nothing left, Dixon is instructed to return to the station at night and drop off his keys when nobody's around. Here, he finds a moving and supportive note left for him by the deceased Chief Willoughby, encouraging him to let go of his hate and to embrace love. At the same time, Mildred's cycles of guilt have been worsening too. Someone burned down her billboards, and now she's out for retaliation. Her fury brings her to the building across the street from the police station, where she intends to toss homemade Molotov cocktails at the station to burn it down. After a brief internal debate, simply states,
Fuck 'em.
And tosses the first bottle. Dixon unfortunately has headphones on and doesn't hear the glass shattering until the third or fourth bottle is impacted, engulfing the entire station in flames. Dixon dies in the fire, and the cycle continues. No, not this time. This time, the cycle is broken. Dixon sees the flames, then spots the case file for Angela's murder. After tucking it safely in his jacket, he leaps through the window, rolling and writhing on the ground in an attempt to put out the fire. Mildred, having seen this, runs downstairs and across the street to him in an unexpected moment of empathy or guilt. Then she sees the case file near Dixon's hand and covers her mouth as the realization dawns on her. Finally making a change to his consistent inaction, Dixon has put his life at stake in an attempt to keep the case alive, all for Mildred's sake. Later on, in the hospital, Red, the man who Dixon threw out a window earlier, shows Dixon compassion when he arrives in a full body cast with his face hidden. This positive reinforcement, along with the note from Willoughby and Mildred's presence with him until the paramedics arrived, helps Dixon make a change to his life in an effort to better the lives of those around him. He chases leads in an attempt to find Angela's killer, but it's to no avail. Still, the fact that he even tried gives Mildred pause in her own fury. She begins to open up to him and to quietly forgive him for his past inaction. The film ends with the pair taking a friendly road trip to go potentially commit a murder. Okay, it may not sound like a happy ending, but I'm intentionally leaving out some context for the sake of levity, and maybe you'll go watch the movie yourself. The point of all this is, with compassion, love, effort, and a system of support, it's possible to work towards breaking your cycle, if not breaking out entirely. Lastly, I found it interesting the town's name is Ebbing. The town doesn't exist, it was made up for this movie, but the name has to be intentional, because much like a tide ebbing and flowing, when it comes to guilt, it comes in waves. All right, let's reach into the bag one more time to get an example of these cycles. Let's see, honestly, I'm hoping for Metal Gear Solid 2 for argument's sake. Raiden's a perfect example. Ooh, maybe Mass Effect, we can dive into Morden. And it's a 3D reimagining of a 90s anime? Really? All right, I'll give it a shot. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Whoops, no, sorry, I like to keep that one in the player. This is the one I meant to put on. Trigun Stampede is part remake, part reimagining, and sort of a prequel to Trigun, a heavily comedic anime I often saw with terribly hilarious English dubs on Toonami growing up. Still, I remember it being a fun watch when it was on. I'm sure it shirked the comedy at least a bit towards the back half of the series, but I never watched it consistently and honestly couldn't get into a rewatch when I tried recently. Anime just isn't my thing. I've watched more than my fair share, don't get me wrong, but the tropes, the voices dubbed or subbed, the overtly horny themes, it's just not for me, despite how many times I've tried. And I keep trying because I love animation in all its forms. And when it comes to animation, Trigun Stampede's action scenes feel straight out of something like Guilty Gear. But this isn't about a recommendation, though I do highly, highly recommend it. So let's tie it back into our themes here. Also, spoilers ahead. Our protagonist, Vash the Stampede, travels a harsh, unforgiving, barren desert landscape with the intent of helping anyone he can while doing less harm than a doctor, even going so far as to save multiple villains actively trying to kill him and a bunch of innocent people. Unfortunately, it seems tragedy follows Vash wherever he goes. As a wanted man, many vicious enemies want to bring about his demise, no matter how many innocents are hurt along the way. This puts Vash in situations where he must save a town while also not killing the person actively attacking the town. This behavior stems from an event that happened in his childhood when he first arrived in this planet's orbit on a ship carrying hundreds of thousands of colonists in cryosleep, ready to wake up and join in on efforts to terraform this desert planet into something of a second Earth, lush, green, and full of life. But all that comes literally crashing down when Vash's brother Nye sets off a series of events leading to the colony ship exploding before anyone's awoken. This explosion also kills their surrogate mother, and Vash watches helplessly as the colonists fall from orbit towards the planet in a shower of meteor-like corpses. Nye also accuses Vash of being complicit, as he naively gave Nye the password he needed to access the terminal that allowed him to push the kill everyone button. But to me, Vash doesn't seem very guilty of anything but helping his brother log into a computer. But to a child who just lost his mother and everyone he's ever known besides his psychopathic brother, that might plant seeds of guilt deep in one's psyche. His choice of atonement comes from that oh-so-familiar isolation, and just like it comes in waves, what better place to examine the theme of isolation caused by guilt than a giant desert? Now that I think about it, maybe a derelict spaceship in the outer reaches of the galaxy? But that's just me spitballing. Anyway, Vash's cycle stems from unresolved issues. Inaction. Nye is psychotic and deadly, with a fixation on keeping Vash to himself through an aggressively abusive relationship. With no qualms about harming innocents, Nye or his henchmen are often the ones following Vash and causing the massive collateral damage. The literal manifestation of Vash's emotional baggage. Through his inaction and unwillingness to talk about the event, he continues to allow others to believe he was solely responsible for the original catastrophe, as well as any other death and destruction his brother has been behind in the years since. Through his misadventures, Vash unintentionally builds himself a strong system of support. People who have seen the real him, all the good he's done for the world, and the pain he carries with him. And that support helps him overcome his trauma and his fear. He learns in a very literal, on-the-nose way that no matter the weight of the cross you may carry or the baggage you may hold, you still deserve to eat. You still deserve to smile. Still deserve to be loved. At the end of the series, Vash finally faces down Nye with the help of his support system. He pushes back against this abusive relationship in an effort to finally stop the source of the trauma, pain, and misery. In an effort to manipulate Vash during the fight, Nye points out that the citizens of the planet have consistently hated and hunted Vash, that they always will. Nobody will love him like he does. But this time, the cycle breaks. Vash has acknowledged his guilt. He's conquered his trauma with support from his loved ones, and he no longer blames himself for those past deeds. He acknowledges Nye is right. The rest of humanity may still hate him, may still open fire on sight, but he'll just keep running until they eventually calm down. Then he'll take his place by their side and live a peaceful life. What? That's how it resolves? Are you kidding me? This ending disappointed me on my first viewing. I mean, I get that Vash is happy and intends to... am I meant to be happy that Vash intends to live a life running away until people just, get tired of hating him? That didn't sit right with me. But then I thought further on it. Maybe it isn't the best way to convey the idea, but I think I know what the writers meant. He's finally forgiven himself. When you carry deep, intense guilt, that's an incredibly daunting task. A difficult step on the path to recovery from the cycles of guilt. I believe that when he says he'll keep running until things calm down, he's acknowledging yet another critical step in recovery. You can forgive yourself, but you can't make others forgive you. Every hurt needs time to heal, and everyone heals differently. So he's made his apology, and he's done everything he could. Now, the rest is up to those who believe he still caused their hurt, those who haven't forgiven him. In time, they may or may not, but it's out of his control. In forgiving himself, he's accepted that, and now he's made a choice. He wants to wait until they forgive him too. Maybe not the choice I'd have done, but at least it was his choice to make, and he made it. All right, I want to start bringing things to a close here, so let's look at the through lines through all this media and find out what's consistent about the cycles of guilt, yeah? As I alluded to earlier, isolation plays a heavy role in all of these stories. It comes in waves, has the player character navigating a sprawling desert alone, and Vash from Trigun wanders similar wastelands with the intent of traveling solo. The UJC Ishimura, UJC? The Ishimura from Dead Space is about as isolating as you can get for a setting. The crew is dead and Isaac is almost always separated from his team. Ebbing, Missouri also feels incredibly isolated itself. Buildings are old, dilapidated, the original unpainted billboards were severely decaying, and it feels like about 15 people live here. You can also pluck an easy theme right out of all of these examples. Hurt people hurt people. Waves gives you the option of killing other wanderers for water. Vash's unresolved pain leads to others getting hurt and hurting him in return. Mildred and Dixon's rivalry escalates over the course of the film as they both hurt each other deeper and deeper until their cycle of guilt is finally broken. And Isaac hurt the person closest to him, lashing out at Nicole from his own pain of losing his parents. I'm telling you, this box of guilt themes, that's only a bit of a joke. Once you recognize these patterns, you'll start to see the cycles of guilt portrayed in media constantly, whether or not it was a direct intention. In fact, what games, films, or shows do you think capture these themes? Will you look back on any of your favorites with new eyes? I certainly hope so. Now, let me bring this to a close. Hi, I'm Phil. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. I can't express to you how much it means to me that you took the time out of your day to do so. And it would mean just a little bit more if you also left a comment letting me know what you thought, sharing whatever insight you want to share. It's honestly my favorite part of this process is getting feedback and just reading what other people have to say about the work. So leave a comment. I promise I'll read it. I read everyone usually more than once, especially the negative ones. So I think it's important to point out that I am not a professional, not certified in any way. I'm some rando on the internet that likes to analyze games and media. So take everything I've said and will say with a grain of salt. That said, here's my advice on dealing with the cycles of guilt. It's important to identify them because they can be a slow creeping thing that you don't realize you're stuck in. But it's essentially a wave of negative emotions that'll come over you, and it can be debilitating. It can be distracting. It can be painful. And it's difficult to know how to deal with that sometimes. And most of the time it passes, but then we find that it'll be coming back again when we least expect it and hitting us in the gut. Just around and around we go. So identifying that you're in a cycle of some sort of negative emotion is important. Next would probably be talking it out. It's difficult to open up about these things sometimes, to be vulnerable to people, but in my own experience, a strong system of support is ideal in getting through difficult emotional moments in your life. So talk to a loved one, talk to family, talk to friends, people that you can trust, professional if it's available to you, fantastic. But it's important to acknowledge that these feelings are here, that you're going through something, and to not just ignore it and bottle it up and pretend everything's fine. Because it can be a creeping thing that gets bigger and worse without you realizing it. It can lead to things like self-isolation, where you push away people that could potentially be a system of support, whether you intentionally push them away or not. And it just deepens the hole. So reach out to others, look for help, and more often than not, you will find it. Be there for other people when you can, and they'll be there for you. The other important thing is to be able to forgive yourself. Other people are not in your control. You can't control if they forgive you. Sometimes you don't even know if they need to in the first place. But a lot of the time you might find that you are not forgiving yourself about something. But whatever you've done, whatever you've gone through, whatever may or may not have happened, you deserve love. You deserve happiness. You deserve to smile. So forgive yourself first and foremost. I know that's easier said than done, but if you can do that, it gets a lot easier past that. And, the world takes enough away from us already. Why add to it by taking more away from yourself? That's all I really have to say, other than whatever you're going through, I really genuinely wish you the best of luck, and know that pain is temporary, and this is going to pass. You're going to get through it, and life will continue. Best of luck to you. Now, for credits, obviously, Logan, first and foremost, thank you so much for editing this video. I know that there were a lot of edits, that there were a lot of changes. This video has been a long time in the making, but I'm really excited for it, and I'm excited for people to see it. Anytime Logan finishes a project, it feels like Christmas when I get to open it up and see all the neat things that he's done with it. He's a fantastic editor and an even better friend. So thank you, Logan.
You're welcome.
Katie, thank you for the art. As always, you have an uncanny ability to pluck images directly out of my brain when I fail to fully articulate them in words and make them a reality. So thank you for that. And to my system of support, my loved ones, my close relationships, thank you so much for everything. You guys were crucial in me getting through the tough times I've been going through lately. So thank you for everything. I love you. To the viewers of this video, thank you for watching and spending your time with me. I love you guys. Best of luck to you. I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and next video is probably going to be on Asteroid City.
May our pain be someone else's lesson. Only you can forgive yourself. 6 6 hours, 19 minutes right ascension, 14 degrees, 58 minutes declination, no sighting.